Welcome all to the Ayush Valley's international webinar. Very happy to have all of you. Very happy to have all of you here with us. I'm going to wait just a few more seconds, a few more minutes, or a minute for more people to join us. We are going to discuss today a very important aspect of not just Ayurveda, but the entire Ayush systems. That includes Siddha medicine, homeopathy, and Unani medicine, and the Tibetan medicine systems. And we want to address two questions. The question about scaling up all of these systems. They provide immense health benefits to people, not only in the curative space, but also in the health promotion and the disease prevention and health maintenance spaces. And also the second concept of upscaling these systems. That means taking the message of Ayurveda and Ayush systems to a slightly more richer clientele, people who are the space that is predominantly occupied by the medical community, and how to go into that space and how to present ourselves as a team that can do equally well, or maybe in several instances better than what the existing best thing is. So I am very fortunate to have here with me three extremely talented and extremely well-informed panelists. I have with me Anil Khandelwal, who comes to us from Haryana, Gurugram in Haryana, a large city that is on the outskirts of New Delhi. And Anilji is the managing director for a company that he has set up called Yogic Secrets. And Yogic Secrets market a very large range of very powerful and very important Ayurveda-inspired formulations. And these are formulations that are providing immense benefits to a lot of people, including people in the COVID space. And in our recent discussions, Anilji has particularly highlighted the need for wanting to attend to the needs of post-COVID patients. This is across the world. These problems are starting to be seen. And also preparing ourselves for the second wave of potentially COVID-related problems, or for the future, many other viral and bacterial conditions that are waiting to turn into epidemics and grow into pandemic status. So that is Anilji. I have with me Puneet Mittal. Puneet, namaskar. Puneet is joining us from Meerut in Uttar Pradesh. And Puneet is, comes from a family of Ayurveda physicians, and they have for generations had an Ayurveda establishment in Meerut. And he decided to break away from that group and go into some of the slightly more modern clinical testing area. And he's the managing director of one of the clinical testing companies based in Meerut. That has a large footprint. It has a presence in Germany. It's doing tests for very large number of large pharmaceutical multinational companies. And Puneet is inspired, and he wants to combine the opportunity of doing tests on Ayurvedic formulations, but using the principles and the systems that are available and are required for the pharmaceutical standards. And Puneet will take us through some aspects of what he's been doing, particularly on the COVID space. And he's just got some early results, clinical results. And maybe he will share with us some of those results, or inform us a little bit, or to whatever level he can. We have the third participant panelist for us today is Sreeraj Gopi. Sreeraj is a PhD in chemistry. Has many years of experience of innovating in the Ayurveda space, and he has developed very large number of future generation formulations inspired by Ayurveda. He is also related to an old Ayurveda traditional family in Kerala, And he's based right now in a small town called Chalakudi, which is, for those people who know Kerala, Chalakudi is on the banks of the river Chalakudi and is close to the big temple town of Thrissur. So here we are. Welcome all to the Ayush Valley's webinar. Before I get started, a few housekeeping rules and what we are going to do. We have about 90 minutes of discussion time. And generally, the organizers permit another 30 minutes if the discussions are picking up and we are getting interesting comments and feedback from our viewers. And depending on that, we'll go on for about 2 hours and we'll draw our session to a close. We might stay on depending on the nature of the quality, but we'll formally close the event at about 2 hours, so 90 minutes to 2 hours. And we have enough time over that period to explore this extremely important space of globalization and taking the message of Ayurveda forward and the challenges we are facing in scaling Ayurveda up. And not just Ayurveda, but all of the Ayush systems to the world. And we have several needs here. One is quality standards. The second one is to see if they produce the kind of therapeutic results or the physiological results, I would call it, in the human system across the world. When you have ethnic groups, how do they work? How different are they? And how then to start to market this and how to win the confidence of people across the world or new markets where people don't know about Ayurveda-inspired products or Ayurvedic products. How do you go about it, the marketing challenge? So I start off with that. I start off with Anilji, and as we go along, I might just stop in between to make a few announcements about future events, etc. So Anilji, the floor is yours. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you for joining the Ayush Valley event. We are a very, very exciting team today because we have somebody who understands Ayurveda and is innovating in Ayurveda space and he's already developed a range of products and that are being marketed around the world very, very successfully. And Sreeraj will tell us about that. And Puneet has that skill of testing and giving you world-class tests that fit in with the best regulations, world-class regulations. And he will tell us about that. And Anilji, we start with yourself about what you are doing, the challenges you are facing, where you want this community to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madanji. I think the topic we are talking about today is most relevant and most needed. Why I say that? Because nature has taught us today that we have not cared for the nature, and we are witnessing that in the current pandemic situation where things have landed to, and not just the home country, but across the globe. Before that, let me also share that I'm neither a doctor nor a clinical expert, nothing, but yes, by profession, I'm a chartered accountant. However, I had an opportunity of spending time across pharma and healthcare. And when I say that I happen to spend my time with GlaxoSmithKline in my earlier stint and later part with Ranbaxy, used to be one of the largest pharmaceutical company. And somehow the entire shift which has happened in the recent time for me to venture into this domain happened when I did one transaction in Romania. A colleague of mine from Ranbaxy, and he started a venture after quitting his job in the nutraceutical domain. And there, after 6-7 years of time, he almost became #1 company in Romania, and the entire work is in the nutraceutical domain. And on top of it, when I used to attend those executive meetings, and I got to know that 70%, almost 70% of the doctors over there, they are suggesting to the patients more non-medicinal drugs, which primarily I would call them, Ayurvedic based products. So belief system increased manifold. And similar scenario I noticed, whether it is in United States or whether it is European markets. But unfortunately in India, in fact, the penetration is not that deep. And I think what Dr. Sreeraj was talking a little while ago, that this Chinese traditional medicine belief system is very high in China for many, many reasons. I mean, of course, the published papers, the clinical studies, the standardization, and so on. So that led to a point in my life that done enough in the financial domain. Let me look at what I can do, or how I can connect with people and can create an ecosystem where we talk of human well-being or wellness rather than talking about or dealing with situations where, despite so much of medical advancements, still the problems are increasing manifold. And also, when I looked at certain statistical information coming in either from WHO India or from wherever, the number of patients, they're increasing every now and then. Whether it is diabetic, we are now known as a diabetic capital of the world, whether it is hypertension and the cancer, and on top of it, the most important, we see the phenomena of, this depression disorders, these are also there. Now, there is something wrong somewhere, despite all these medical advancements. Why all this is happening? That led me to think over what, as a chartered accountant, can do something on this. And I'm fortunate enough, got in touch with some very intelligent people, smart people, knowledgeable people, like Dr. Gopi, as an example. I had a couple of rounds of discussion when I went to Kochi, and also some people like Dr. Sharad Sarle, who had spent good time in dealing with Ayurvedic system. And interestingly, on the other hand, I encountered with some very, very caliber senior medical doctors, and there what I found, it might sound funny, but when it comes to their management of disease, they looked at more nutraceutical products rather than taking a medicinal drugs. But my question used to be that why don't you suggest or prescribe to your patients? Now, there are a couple of logics and answers to that. Don't want to get into that. So that led to, figure out that what are the secrets of the yogis in the past, where they used to live a quality life. In fact, someone sent me the other day one video of a gentleman who is 123 years old, and he was found walking at Abu Dhabi airport. Right, and it's a short video which is talking about that what led to his such a quality life is the simplicity, it is the food habits, it is zero stress level, and so on. So in fact, again, the point came in to the mind that we are the doctor, for ourselves. I mean, there is no need to look at the doctor outside. We ourselves are the doctor. But how do we communicate? How we create the awareness? How do we create that up to the boardroom also? Because I'm coming from a corporate world, so idea came in that how we can take this philosophy, this thinking, this awareness to the boardroom also. And there, I came across a company in the United States which is doing a wellness assessment screening of the corporate executives. And there they found that the health score was pathetic. And there the journey began, that how we can inculcate the natural products. So there were many factors, which led to the point that, yes, this is something, a most important area to look at. So that's where my focus went into one area only, which is called lifestyle related issues. As you rightly said that, or I would say that, 200 years ago, if we go back, the medical world was talking of dealing with infectious diseases, which was very important and relevant. If a foreign organism is coming to the body, it is only the chemical weapons can shoot them down. But when it comes to the non-infectious, and we call it a non-communicable diseases, which are lifestyle related, either diabetes or hypertension or cancer or anything, how do we deal with that? Right. So these are non-communicable or lifestyle related things. So that's where the focus started building when I got onto the journey, and my entire journey is going to be focusing on well-being part when it comes to the non-communicable disease areas or lifestyle related. there again, I got a very interesting learning that 80% of the disease is primarily on account of inflammatory conditions, whether it is cardiac related issues, or whether it is joint, or whether it is stroke, or whether it is anything, we can keep talking about it. So if there is, and then medical world was in the 200 years ago dealing with infectious diseases, not with the lifestyle related diseases. There are a lot of hit and trial which is happening in this space. Of course, medical advancement has gone very high, but nevertheless, what I strongly believe and feel, I think we have so much of knowledge of the ancient, time, which we need to bring in now, and it is high time, particularly with the COVID situation we are faced with. Again, I don't want to talk like a doctor, where I had been interacting with various doctors and learned about that. I was talking to Dr. Madanji some time back that now large number of cases are surfacing again in France and Spain. Now, these are raising lot many questions. What are we going to do? Ultimately, what I see, my personal opinion is, and that's what I'm practicing, that how we can cure any virus or any disease, and more particularly with the lifestyle related issues, with the help of the nature or natural products. Dr. Gopi, Puneet, you are really super intelligent in this space, and would like to learn from you more on this. Interestingly, I came across another very interesting scientist from Russia, and when Madanji was talking about the water, or someone was talking about the water some time back, we have collaborated with a guy from Russia, and trust me, again a non-medical guy, have treated on record more than 20 patients from diabetic conditions where their insulin intake was 50 or 100 units. Now within a 4 months time frame, they are completely out. I mean, it wonders me too. And when I tell the doctors that just water can treat this, they just can't believe. Again, water cannot be standardized, that's for sure. Water cannot be subject to what do you call, research papers on that. Water is water. But the difference is that if we structured the water, like water has a memory, and if we can take the water to minus 3000 gravitational force, it changes the molecular structure of the water. It becomes very rich in hydrogen and protons. And just making few drops of the water, it changes the molecular structure of the water. And if you consume it on a regular basis, it does. Because the scientists have proven that cellular energy is more important than any other thing. So if we can manage 70 trillions of cells or whatever number, I think we can be absolutely disease free. So I don't want to talk much on this. I'll stop here and leave it in the hands of other speakers to share their views. I'll continue talking about it.
Thank you, Anilji. You've raised. Thank you so much. You've got us on a good start here in terms of fundamental aspects of how policymakers or how people think about our systems of medicine, not only the Indian systems. And you compared very nicely the Indian with the Chinese system, and you took us all the way into something very interesting that you mentioned about water as a therapeutic agent, and how it can be standardized only with studies, and those studies are there with us, and hopefully we will understand how this works. Sreerajji, you have known and you interacted with Anilji for many years now, and so you know each other, but we don't know. We would love to know a little more about what you have done over the past and why you came into the space, and where you would like not only yourself, but also the community and users to go. What is it that you have on your mind? You have to unmute. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Madan, for inviting me to this space. Even though I'm not an Ayurveda physician, I'm a chemist by profession. For the last few years, I was engaging myself into phytochemicals, which are nothing but the plant-derived chemical entities. We can classify phytochemicals into therapeutic and also some other benefits. So I was actually a trained chemist and my profession was innovating from the phytochemical space, and also I'm a nanotechnologist. So having said that, I don't see much discrimination between phytochemicals and Ayurveda functional materials. So the difference now in the Ayurveda space, the people who manufacture the medicine may not have such knowledge in the phytochemistry or the plant space, or they are just manufacturers. Initially, if you look at the history, the medicines were prepared by either the physician himself or by the instruction from the physician. So if you take this scenario into the modern medicine, the modern doctor is not even knowing how the modern medicine is being formed. So there are a lot of interdisciplinary activity that is happening in the modern medicine or allopathic medicine by a computational biologist, a biotechnologist, synthetic chemist who actually make the molecule by himself, and a lot more. So there is a collaborative knowledge that is being put forward in order to make a medicine and take 14, 15 years to come up with a drug. But in the Ayurveda space, this collaboration is lacking, which means that the chemist is not involved in the production of, for example, RESA drugs, which involves high-level toxic minerals. It has to undergo a process in order to purify these medical things, and a high-level chemistry knowledge has to be implied. So we are just following what is being written in the literature. We have to mind one thing: there is no siddhi here. This is science. This is Ayurveda. If you want to project Ayurveda as a science, you need proof. You need why it is happening, and you need what all are things is there in particular medical system. If you want to take Ayurveda into the global space, I'm not talking about, there are a lot of challenges what we need to face as a team before entering into that space, because we need to know the matrix effect. One of my major work in the past was establishing a matrix effect. I mean, for example, many of the Ayurveda medicines are kashaya formulation. It means decoction. So what is the marker compound in the decoctions, or what are the marker compounds in the decoction, and why you need a matrix? I mean, what will happen if you isolate a single drug and give to them, and what is the need of a matrix, why a decoction is needed? So these all are things needed to explain in or translate this knowledge. Probably this knowledge would be already there with the Ayurveda physician, but it has to transfer into a modern science basis. Why it is needed? It is not for Ayurveda itself, it is for the generations to digest this knowledge, because we are living in a world where you need to prove everything, that you need a proof for why it has to be taken and why this kind of system is needed. So you need to prove in order to convince the global community, number one. And number two, as I mentioned already, we have clinicians here. We need a clinical trial, but it need not be like a modern medical terminology. I mean, it need not be adhering to such a systematic of what modern medicine or allopathic medicine says. We need to derive our own protocols. The protocol will have some deviations, because Ayurveda medicines always treat patients, not, as far as my understanding concerned, not the symptoms. So they also treat with the Tridosha philosophy. So you may have to include that kind of, which I don't know, being a chemist, but probably Dr. Puneet can say much more about the designing the clinical trials for this. But whatever it may be, we need more standardization. We know that RESA drugs are not making any harmfulness to the humans, but it's not approved anywhere other than in India. It's not being practiced, but they are very powerful drugs. Why it is not approved? They don't know what it is, and they need to know what it is. So We need material chemistry, organic chemistry, and all these botanists, because when Ayurveda became a commercialized system, what happens is that people want, or manufacturers also want to make more cost-effective medicines. So what they are putting in the decoctions, preparations, they themselves don't know. That is why we encounter different efficacy with different manufactured decoctions. We are not having any huge differences in different paracetamol being manufactured by different companies. We are not, because it's been standardized to paracetamol. But if you wanted to make the same.
Sorry, Gopi, continue. I just put this up because you are talking about Ayurvedic formulations, and this is where we are. There are some efforts being taken by people around in India to come up to this point. And I'm glad you touched this. I will just leave this on the screen and let you continue so that people will come back to this point with us.
Yeah, it has to be enforced that you follow this system right from choosing the herbs. I mean, right from a botanist certified that this is the plant material that you need to put in, and you need a fingerprinting for the final formulation. If it is a decoction, you need a fingerprinting always, because you cannot probably identify a marker, and always cannot identify 200 molecules and say that at this concentration level we have, but we may need to stick on to some kind of a fingerprinting system, especially in case of decoctions, because people should know what they are having at least. So this is my view on this.
Thank you, Sreeraj. Thank you so much. You have touched on some of those difficult areas, and I'm very happy that we have a very well trained, recognized, and well published chemist here with us, an authority in that space. And we'll come back, because your comment about Kashayam touches a little bit the comment about water itself as a therapeutic agent that Anilji made. So I want to come back to this, but I take this opportunity to draw Puneet into this discussion. Puneetji, tell us a little bit about what you've understood based on your interactions with people from the pharmaceutical industry, the trials that you do, the challenges you face when it comes to wanting to do a clinical trial to the same standards, but using Ayurvedic formulations. Please, Puneetji.
So thank you very much for inviting me. And for related to the Ayurveda medicine, actually, most of the clients my company works for are European clients. And what we see was they consider medicine as a medicine. But if we talk about India, we divide them into Ayurveda, homeopathy, then nutraceutical, and then the conventional. But when we talk about research, we count a medicine as a medicine, and we follow the same procedure. A few years back, CCRAS developed a few, they already defined the protocols that is very much similar to the conventional one. So now we have the methods, but the problem is the education. So we don't have any, neither a training program, maybe none of, if we talk about Ayurveda, the Ayurveda physicians, they're not taught the GCP guidelines, how to run the trials. And that is one of the major factors. The Ayurveda is not getting accepted worldwide. What other factor I see is, we talk about Chinese medicine initially, so Chinese medicines are a part of integrated medicine these days in a number of countries. Like Australia, it is an integrated, if you go to a conventional hospitals, you would find a Chinese medicine in that. Being they do have an integrated medicine department these days with a couple of Chinese, and they have the nutraceuticals as well. But yes, in India, like we discussed earlier, and Anilji mentioned that in case you would be going maybe somebody would be in Romania, the conventional doctor would be writing up the nutraceuticals, but here the conventional doctors, they don't. The reason is most of the times they're not allowed to. This is what they say. So, and the same is the case with Ayurveda. But yes, we all see that doctors do write Live 52, they do write multiple formulations from Ayurveda, but only those formulations that have that have gone through that series of the research and that have been proven. So they know, yes, this is working. And that is what we have to do. Maybe once we would be maybe into the session more, I have made a small presentation for maybe 8 to 10 pages, like why we are doing the clinical trials in Ayurveda, why we need to do it. And then if we do clinical research in Ayurveda, where we can go. And also maybe there are so many clinical trials happening these days for COVID that are for Ayurveda, but we need to make sure, are they ethical enough to be accepted worldwide? So,
Punijit, I heard you say you have a little presentation. Did you want to you want to share the screen and you want to show?
I'm doing it right away. Thank you.
Okay. Do take us through your, what you have, particularly what you feel is missing for us and what needs.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, here we are.
So, because we are into different aspects, so initially I was thinking we should be talking about Ayurveda, but it is a natural industry in all. Like we're talking about Ayurveda, homeopathy, maybe any herbal-pathy. What can we do, or where we are lacking in the clinical trials? Because there are companies running clinical trials in India, but the trial is not getting accepted to FDA, or not getting accepted to the European Commission. So where we are lacking. So this is the main thing, because sometimes it happens, you see the clinical trial recruitment starts today, and on the day 15th, you have the report. But this doesn't make sense. It needs a lot of hard work and many people, and maybe a lot of procedures to be followed in order to run a clinical trial. So today we would be taking forward what a clinical trial or research actually mean, and then we would go ahead with what we can do in Ayurveda. And there would be many participants, maybe many viewers who are into the clinical researches or Ayurveda, and they would understand where they are lacking after this session. Let's move ahead. So this is a small thing. Probably most of the people know what clinical research is. So what we measure into the clinical research is usefulness. Like everybody is testing for efficacy. Like COVID medicine trials are going on, and people are doing, they have given the medicine to a number of patients and then tested them, positive, negative, done. But clinical research is more than that. It is evaluating the safety and also learning the adverse effects. So in case you are making the clinical trial for a specific disease, the complete body has to be tested what adverse effect the medicine can make, even if it is an Ayurveda or an conventional, because then only maybe when we would be going to the other country, they would ask this data. No, why would we come to know that your product, the Ayurveda, is safe? We know it is safe. No, but we need a proof to prove it. We need a proof to prove it is safe. Okay, next. Okay, this is the chart that says stall. Like in the conventional, this is a comparison we're doing for a conventional and the Ayurveda bypass. And what I feel is the major drawback why Ayurveda is not getting accepted these days. Like if we start with maybe the conventional process, first is a design of the formulation, then it is tested for safety as well as efficacy on the animal model. And what I feel is that should be done in the Ayurveda as well, because we need to decide the dosage. You can't put in whatever dosage you feel like. And also need to check, in case you're taking the medicine for a shorter time, then you need to make sure that you have done the toxicity test first, maybe the cytotoxicity in the particular, like you're making something for the lungs. So you need to make sure that the product is safe on the lung cell lines. Because if you're not doing so, we feel, yes, this is Ayurveda, and if we can skip it, probably that would not be an issue, because we know it is already safe. But we are talking about acceptance. It would not be getting accepted to a different, like if you're going to a developed country, they would say, no, we want the we want it to be safe in all the ways, no? And by that way, maybe the sponsor, the pharmaceutical company or the Ayurveda company also have some sort of confidence built up. Yes, my product is safe enough and my product is effective enough, and they would have better chances of sales as well. So it is not about just the maybe making a few tests over product, but it is also about you gaining your own confidence into the product. Then once the animal trials are over, then we come to the clinical trials. Normally, in case it is a natural formulation, we skip or maybe make some changes in the phase 1 trial where it is more towards the efficacy and the dose building. Because in most of the cases in Ayurveda, in the preclinical, we got to know there is something called LD50, the lethal value. It comes to be around over 500, so it is well enough. You can take even the dosage could be a little higher. It won't harm you. So once the clinical trial of phase 1 is done, then a pilot study of the efficacy is done as a phase 2 trial. And most of the Ayurveda companies, in fact, if we talk about the bigger ones, maybe I'm not taking the name here on the screen, but even the bigger companies, they only go to the phase 2. That is maybe a 30-patient study. If you would be checking CTRI or maybe any other registries that are working on the trials that are being done in India. So most of the studies are the comparative study, 60 patients, then single arm, 30 patients, maybe 18, 20, 40, but these are not technically significant studies. They could be taken as phase 2 studies, but they would not be very much giving you an idea of the safety on the long-term use. So normally bigger companies too, they do a phase 2 trial and get the product into the market. But ideally, if we want the product to be accepted worldwide, we need a trial on a statistically justified sample size. By sample size, I mean the number of people who are getting enrolled in the trial. So it should be statistically validated, and then it would be justified, because there are a number of algorithms. Then in case you are making a medicine, you get approval here, you're marketing it here, but in case you would be giving it a registration to European Council, they would say, this sample size is not justified. Which algorithm did you use? So you need to make sure that whatever you use, the standard is one, no? In case you would be working on Indian GCP guidelines, in case you would be working on European GCP, or maybe if it is US FDA, it is very much similar. The only problem is we're not trained for. So once the clinical is done, then maybe then Mr. Gopi's work comes in, then the chemistry testing and all sort of paper making for it. And then the labeling is done, manufacturing, sales, and then this is the different part from where we would not be discussing it now. So, but in Ayurveda, like I have shown in the picture, from developing the medicine, it just go into the manufacturing and then to the sales and then to the market. So because most of the people know, oh, Ayurvedic medicine, what will it do? No, it would do no harm. And later on, when they plan to have their product as on the international market, it sometimes doesn't work. And sometimes maybe you can get an approval as a food supplement, but you would not be getting an acceptance as a medicine. So in case we want to keep the Ayurveda ongoing, and in case we want to scale up, we should be following the standard practice of the clinical research.
No, okay, thank you.
Okay, so any questions?
No, this is good. I was just going to say if we were going to show us.
This is a small presentation. We would not be discussing all the principle here, but there are certain principles we follow in a good clinical practices. So this is not a clinical practices training. So I have noted down a few questions on the basis of the principle that are very generic. And in case we have people here who are running the clinical trials and they want to know if we are doing it the right way, or there are pharma companies who would be looking to how we can go ahead with the clinical trial, because yes, it needs money. And if you're putting in money and the money is wasted, and if it is not done the right way, then there's no point wasting it. So that's the reason maybe I have made a few, for each and every principle, I have made a few questions where what I felt is, I have seen so many companies who are doing the trials but miss out these small points, and that's the reason they sometimes fail to claim.
Punitji, could I have the previous slide, if I may? Are you able to show us the previous slide, the one with the big, with
Yes,
all the
yes,
principles?
yes.
Oh, thank you.
So the principles basically are divided on the ethics, the protocol in science, then what the responsibilities of the practitioner, and then the safety of the patient.
Have we lost Puneet?
No, I am here.
Oh, so,
is it audible?
No, it's audible. Thank you.
Okay.
So you have listed here in great detail all the major areas of ethics, protocol, and science. I don't know if everybody can read responsibilities, informed consent, and what's that in the pink box below quality, data quality, and integrity?
Okay, this is the investigational product. No, this is something from Mr. Gopi's side. Though the product should be very much manufactured in a GMP facility. Then only it would be coming into the fire.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but please do continue.
Thank you. So okay.
Are you going to detail all of this very quickly, or are you going to take us through just the ethics part, or
no, actually, this everything is very much discussed in the detail in the next slide, and then we would come to know.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about ethics. And if we talk about Ayush, then once we decided to have a trial, then we need to notify Ayush or maybe ICMR or any regulatory body before the initiation of the trial. And this is the problem. In the COVID, there was a company who claimed for the product. I would not name it here, but we all know it. We would not, maybe the company claims we treated so many patients for COVID, but yes, they did not notify, and that's why they failed. So we need to make sure, yes, you notified to any of the regulatory bodies prior to the initiation of the trial. So this is what the first point for the ethics is. Then the other thing that is the major part of the ethics is the risk-benefit analysis. So in case you feel the herbal formulation is the benefits from the herbal formulation is worth taking the risk for the patients, so then only you should go ahead. Otherwise, the ethics committee should not give a go ahead for the trial. For example, you have a breast cancer, and you want to run a trial for breast cancer, and you say this herbal formulation is working very well for it, but you don't have enough proof earlier, or maybe if you have the proof, let's say you have a mortality rate of you are treating 60% of the people and 40% of the people are dying. So in that case, it would not be coming into that formulation is of no use actually. So in that case, such a trial should not happen. So ethics says our main point is to have proper safety of the individual on which you are testing. He is the most important part. So we would not be taking any risk in case the benefits does not justify. So in that case, ideally, any ethics committee should not give the approval, because the ethics committee has to give the annual reports to the ICMR, and in that case, in case they don't, the statement that does not justify, then the ethics committee loses the license too. So we need to make sure that in case it is a herbal formulation too, but we should have benefits and risk analysis being done beforehand.
There might be many people in the audience who want to ask questions and on all of these points, and I'm curious to see the other things. If you can quickly flick us through the other points that you have on, if there are other principles you wanted to expand on, like you have.
Okay. So makes sense. No, I would be quickly taking it, and then would be working on the questions. Okay. So, okay, before initiation of the trial, and once you have got the approval, then it is a mandate to register a trial in the clinical trial registry. There are 9 primary registries worldwide. You can register on any of them and run it. And what I have seen is, maybe from most of the companies, the products into the market, and they're making the claims for clinically proven this. And when I search on the registries, I don't find any of them. So most of them, I would say. So one has to register on the clinical trial registry before making the first enrollment. Then the other thing is the patient compensation is the main thing. What is lacking here in India is most of the times the CROs, the hospitals or the sponsor, they're not willing to give the proper compensation to the patient. That is, we have to pay to the patient for every ml of blood we take. We have to pay them for the travel. We have to pay them for food, and everything would be taking care of them because they are the ones we would be testing on and are important to us. So a patient has to, or a subject has to be given proper importance and has to be given the compensation, and this compensation has to be mentioned in a document. So when we have an audit, let's say it is a European audit, they would be checking up whether the trial, in the trial, the patient has been paid the compensation too. The other one is the safety. Female, if there is a female participant, that pregnancy test is must, because we cannot take risk giving to any a medicine or trying a medicine on a pregnant lady. So this test is a must. So whatever we can see is like in the ethics. Okay, the last one, liability insurance. Okay, so most of the times the Ayurveda trials doesn't have big budgets. So it is seen that people think Ayurveda is safe and we should not be taking any insurance because for instance, we had done 3 COVID trials in past 3 months. They're ongoing. And one of the clients said, what is the importance of making the insurance where the policy amount, the premium amount is 10 lakh rupees? We said, no, this is must. In case you're not doing it, we would not be maybe taking your project. The reason is that this is a mandate. You cannot take risk with someone's life. And that's where the liability insurance are must. So in case you want to maybe do any clinical trial next time, if it is not an observational one, you should take a liability insurance. Next. Okay, so the protocol and science. Okay, before moving to any of the clinical trials, like I already discussed, we need to have the toxicity studies done. So by toxicity means if it is for a 14 days, if you are giving a medicine for 14 days, then in that case, only cytogenicity and cytotoxicity and the acute toxicity are needed. Otherwise, if you are giving a medicine for a longer time, then there are many toxicities we need to work on, like carcinogenicity, mutagenicity, and so more. So we need to make sure the product is safe in all the aspects, because when you would be going for a registration, you would get an answer, where is the toxicity? How can you enter a human trial without making it the claim it is safe? So once this is really working on the animal, then we think, yes, we can start working on human with a small number and then with a larger number. And okay, so the other thing is your protocol should be well defined. We have seen formulations with 5 or 6 pages, and that is not, a protocol has a fixed format. So in case some of the participants want, we can share the formula, and they're from a clinical research background, we can share the protocols as well, like how to make the protocols. So at least somebody would learn. And then we need to design, the protocol should have a case report form, it should have the investigator brochure, it should have even the local translations. It happens that and maybe a doctor have a difficulty reading the things in English and would be more towards working to the local language. So each and every document should be translated in the language, because then only he would be able to work for the trial. Okay, and we need to make sure all the protocols are signed by the sponsors, and the sponsor should take the responsibility and of the medicine before handing over to the site. Okay, next. So the responsibilities. So this is something very important, and this is something very it is just a part of the major part of the clinical trial. This is the main approval process, and whether the PI or whether the doctor is qualified enough to take the project. So first is the ethics committee approval. We all know ethics for running any clinical trial, we should have an IEC approval. In case we don't have it, you don't enter into a trial. And then in that case, none of the, forget about the developed nations, none of the developing or underdeveloped nations would be accepting the product as a medicine. So after that, like then the PI, we need to make sure if in case we are doing a trial, no matter if it is for, let's say, diabetes, and we know it is Ayurveda, but what happens is in case we do a trial and we involve an Ayurveda practitioners, but let's say for Ayurveda practitioners, they do have knowledge of Ayurveda, but we need to have somebody who has the knowledge of how the cardiac function is needed, or in case, let's say after the Ayurveda course, the person has to do some specialization. Either the person should be from cardiology, should be assigned to a cardiology trial. Person from nephrology should be assigned to a nephrology trial. So we need to make sure the PI is well qualified in the therapeutic area. This is, again, sometimes we don't give much importance to this point, but in case you're going for a registration, then you would got to know this is very much important. They would say, the PI was not qualified enough to run this trial. How can we believe the results are valid? Yeah. So the other thing is everybody, in every participant, the coordinators, PI, CRA, and in fact, the sponsor, like the medical directors or people from the sponsor side who are working on the trial, everybody should be GCP trained. It is a good clinical practices. So sometimes this is also maybe for each and every submission, you need to put in the GCP training certificate for each and everybody along with the document. Then, then it is the site initiation training. It is responsibility of the CRO or maybe the sponsor to give the initiation, the site an initiation visit to make sure the recruitment, the enrollment is as they wanted. They're giving the medicine at the right time, because there could be little issues if the PI directly start working. So they need to tell how to give the medicine, when to give the medicine, and more details about the medicine until the PI is satisfied how to use on the human. Then is the informed consent. Like we all know, you cannot force somebody to take a medicine or any treatment. So we need a signed content prior to the agreement. And it's not only about getting the signed content. For, let's say, I'm taking an example of COVID every time, because this is the scenario. The company is working on 3 COVID trials, and all 3 of them are in Ayurveda, and are about to start the 4th one, and one of them is performing very well, and the other 2 are okay. So so we need to take the informed consent, and it is not about taking the consent or getting the sign. It is about our CRC would be there, who would be telling the patient that this is what would happen in next 5 days. You would be given this, and this much compensation would be given to you, and would explain the complete protocol to the patient, and then only would take the consent. It's maybe I have seen to a couple of hospitals, so you would be entering inside, they would be taking a signature, and you would be part of the trial. The patient would not know about it. No. So a patient should know he is part of the trial and should give the consent in full sense. And the 4th point is the ICF is translated in the local language, because many of the times the patient would be much able to understand the local language, Hindi, Gujarati. One of the trial of COVID that is happening at present is we have one site in Telangana for which the document is, all the documents are converted to Telugu. Then the other one is in Gujarat, for which everything is converted into Gujarati as well. And yes, the Maharashtra one, it is converted to Marathi. So we would, a person, maybe each and every document should have the translated copies, so that it would have more understanding to the local people. Otherwise, taking the signature does not make sense if the person would not understand what is inside. Then the data quality and integrity. Okay, I would be taking it very quickly because it's getting delayed. Okay, data quality and integrity, you need to make sure the data is very much accurate, and need to make sure you are doing the trial on the specific sample size, so that the data is significant. Then you need to make sure you're maintaining the confidentiality of the complete trial data as mentioned in the clinical trial agreement. If the sponsors say you cannot share the data, you cannot. And also you would be doing the masking that way. Okay, and also, again, once you have the data from the trial, you would be working on the statistical analysis. And you need to make sure that whatever software you use for the analysis should be internationally acceptable. So making an analysis in the Excel probably would not be very much significant when you would be submitting your proposals to registration. Then is regulatory monitoring is required, and third-party audit is required for each and every. So like you would be very much familiar, there are so many news these days, people making claims of COVID. So it needs a third-party audit because there are so many fake data coming these days, and we would discuss that as very quickly. Even we have seen a couple of hospitals putting up the fake data, though not be giving the names. But we have such a case study in very soon. So is the data handle, okay, you should have a data handling plan defined previous to the trial. Okay, then is the investigational products. This is something a manufacturer has to follow. This is very much general. In case a manufacturer is a GMP compliant, then he probably must be following everything. So the labeling, the COA, the MSDS, and apart from this, the third point is very important. The labeling for the trial is very much different. In case it is a masking trial, you need to hide from the doctor or the patient, then the labeling would be accordingly. Then is the quality control. What I already told you is the third-party reviewal. And then for whatever translations you have, you need to have the translations, the reverse translation certificate. So that there are at times people do translation on Google Translator, and when you do a reverse translation, then usually it is something else. You feel like, oh, I have not written it. So you need to justify this, and you need to do a reverse translation, and then only you've got to know the translation is right. No Google translation is accepted for the documents. Then the interim cannot be published. You need to have the trial completed, and then only the results should come out, actuals. So in case you feel like, oh, I have given the medicine to this, the mean of this was this, and the mean of this was this, I would be telling in between the trial, no, that is losing the data integrity. Once the trial is over, then only you should be telling the mean. If you want, you can say, I have given it to this many numbers, and we have seen good results in this many. Or maybe, so numbers you can talk, but if you're talking about mean, you're losing the data integrity. So you need to make sure, no matter how much pressure you're getting from the sponsor side, or no matter what you're getting from the media or maybe anybody, but never share the data. Because if you have the early data into hand, then if it would be my company, we would not accept such data. Then there's pharmacovigilance, most important. We need to check continuously that there is no adverse effect of any of the medicine. Okay, we discussed most of it. Everything what is related to the clinical trial, this is something very much into the, this is what we already know, the registries, insurance, and okay, one thing we missed is data archiving. So this is a mandate to keep the data of the clinical trial intact for 15 years. So that, because in those 15 years, you can have an audit anytime. So you have to make sure the data is accurate, it is non-biased, it is true, and it is very much maintained for the archival. And both, it's not maybe you're taking the archival only on the IT or maybe the virtual one, you have to keep the tangible form as well. Okay, so players in the clinical trial, regulators are the bodies, and then the sponsors is the pharmaceutical company or the Ayurveda owner. And then the CROs is the clinical research organization. These are the people we have in the organization, like medical director, project manager, then the CRAs and the regulatory personnel. And they would be connecting to the hospitals and their ethics committees, taking the approvals. And then it would be the hospital part. And we would be doing the monitoring side by side, but it is hospital that would be doing most of the tasks. Okay, is everybody online?
Puneet, thank you so much. Do you have a few more slides? So I'm just looking at the time we have.
Yes, this is the last one actually.
Last one. Okay, thank you. This is also related to a question that we have from Rishi among the panelists. I hope you'll also address the question, what's the number of patients required in each arm to prove efficacy of COVID trials? So
okay, let's take up the questions like, what is the number of patients we need to take for each and every arm, right?
Would you like to go through your slide first before you quickly address the question? Because I want to come back to.
I would think maybe we should end up with the questions first, because this is a case study and this is very much specific to a different scenario.
No, please continue with your study. We'll come back to the question.
Okay, so this is an instance. No, this is one of the study that is working very well for COVID and from an Ayurveda formulation. But I have not written the product name here, putting in X. The reason is we are not here to advertise. So this is a multi-centric open label randomized clinical trial to evaluate this efficacy and safety of the product. So it is in comparison to standard of care. So what you have seen in the news from past so many days, maybe from so many companies, they are doing a placebo-controlled trial on the coronavirus patients. That is completely against the ethics as per my personal view, because you're ultimately taking risk with someone's life giving placebos. Because placebos are null, they're nothing. So in case, this is again a risk-benefit analysis. So in case you're planning to do a clinical trial for COVID, then we need to understand at present what is the best and should compare our medicine to the best. So that in case our medicine is best, then only it should come to the market, otherwise no. It's not about earning, it is about developing the medicine. So for COVID, that was the reason. No, initially the client says they want to do it against placebo, but ideally we suggested them we should never do a life-threatening disease against the placebo. So we are doing this trial in comparison to standard of care. So we started with 3 sites, and for the interim, like we were needing 30 subjects. So we got 12 subjects from one site, then 20 from other, 3 from maybe 5 from the site 3. But when we analyzed the data, we got to know the site 1 had given the right data and it was very well explanatory. But from the site 2, what we have got is the data from the site and pathological from the doctor side, what we have got, let's say fever, we got 104. But the doctor said the patient has high fever. But our monitoring team said the patient has mild fever. So this is the data gap. So we got to know, oh, there could be some problems with the data, and this is happening to multiple places this time. And that is the reason we stopped that particular site. So this happens at times, maybe because everybody wants to take an advantage and people want to jump into the market saying, oh, my product is working well and we have tested so many patients, but need to do an analysis and audit on each and every level, whether the data is accurate. So we found, oh, for those 20 subjects, we did not take any of the data. And let's say on the third site, we thought to give it a try to recruit from an Ayurveda site, but they did a protocol violation. So in the protocol, it was written, they need to take until 70, but they recruited 2 people from 172 and 75. So because they were not reading the protocol very well and it was for COVID, so they thought, no, we would not continue. So this thing happens. Maybe from the high level perspective, it seems like we would be doing a trial on 3 sites and all the 3 sites would be giving the data, and we quickly believe the data is fine and do the analysis and, oh, the results are with us and we are doing great. But it doesn't happen that way. So we prioritize, then we monitor, and then we got to know, yes, the data is sizable. Okay, once this is done, we thought we need to give maybe a shot to some different site as well. So we recruited one more site, and now the interim report or the interim data is ready today. And that is the reason I was a little happy, because for COVID, this particular trial is working outstanding, and it is in comparison to standard of care, where in standard of care, we are even giving maybe the favipiravir, and like they're giving azithromycin, we are giving paracetamols, we are giving antipyretic, we said, and antiviral, and even the antacids. So what happens is, what we have seen, the herbal medicine outperformed it. But again, we need, but what happens is, when you tell this to the sponsor, they would say, oh no, tell us more about it, we need to publish. But again, the research does not work in that way. You need to make the whole recruitment, and then we would be going forward. But to maybe, this is not to advertise, but for that particular medicine, what I would say is, it worked remarkably well. And from past 15 and 15 in the herbal medicine, out of 15, only 2 patients were positive on day 5 with a viral load of 26 and 28. So it was very low. And
Puneet, sorry, just interrupt here. All your patients were COVID positive on your PCR test?
No. After, on the 5th day, 13 were positive out of 15. We would say 83%. But on the 10th day, everybody was positive. But what we thought is, it's not about positive and negative, because efficacy is all about the CT value, the viral load. So what we thought, we analyzed is, the viral load was going down. So those 2 patients that were still positive on the 5th day has viral load that is very much near to 30. So we knew that in next couple of days, they would be negative. And in the initiation, they were 15 and 16. So it was very highly contagious patients.
Thank you, Puneet. So you were going to add to this?
Because, yes. So what we thought is, initially, let's say for a trial, we were working on efficacy. We were testing RT-PCR, especially the CT values. It wasn't only about negative and positive, but it was the complete CT value, so that we can analyze, is the medicine working regularly in decreasing the viral load. Then we worked on D-dimer, because we need to make sure, because we know the viral is working on coagulation. And that's where we included the D-dimer. We included the precalcitonin, and these are the tests that makes the trial expensive. And sometimes we feel, no, we should go ahead with RT-PCR, negative, positive, comparing those 50 people, and it is done. Oh, my product is working 10% better, 20% better, but it doesn't work that way. We need to understand if the person is regularly getting benefited, and in case it is working on the virus. So that is the reason we are doing CRP, we're doing ESR, eosinophil, then even the CT scans, SpO2 daily, so that we would understand the difference in yesterday's and today's condition of the patient. And apart from it, we are doing a global assessment on the symptoms, like of a person, how many times a person cough, then the fever, and we cross-check it. We do assessment with the doctor once, and we do the same assessment with the patient, so that we can cross-check the data in case we are getting the right data. Because this is for COVID, and by sitting at home, we cannot monitor them perfectly. So this is the only way we can work out. And we are working this could be the first virtual trial that is happening for maybe the virtual monitoring. And apart from this was normal, but we need to check the safety, whether the medicine is causing any effect to liver, whether the medicine is causing any effect to creatinine. Like for instance, for creatinine, most of the people who were taking standard of care, the creatinine level went up. And this is a few side effects we need to show to the people to have better acceptance of the Ayurveda, because we want to prove it is safe. We want to prove we want to take the Ayurveda as a medicine system, not as a supplement system. So this is all about from my side, maybe.
Thank you, Puneet.
Okay,
You've given
that's
us.
what we did towards acceptability of Ayurveda worldwide. Thank you.
Please leave this last slide down for a second so that people can digest what you have just offered. And what you're offering here is what you offered us today is extremely valuable. We have learned a lot about how you do clinical trials, the details in here, etc., etc. What I would love to do, Puneet, is see if you're happy to take a few questions. But before I take the questions from the audience, what I suggest is that we go across our panelists to see if they have some comments or questions, and then we come back to you. There are one or two very, very important questions that are coming up in our chat. So thank you, Puneet. If you could stop sharing your screen, then we are all back on. Thank you so much.